Hey all, this is Lori Kleiman. I am today's presenter. We are attempting right now to get you the slides via handout. For some reason, the typical way this works with BrightTalk wasn't working this morning. So it looks like I'm going to shut down my mail. And if we all watch the attachments and links section, I am hoping within the next few minutes, BrightTalk will get those up. Worst case, I will send them to you following today's presentation. So let's just get started on time because I really believe in that. And if you'll just watch the attachments and link section, if you would like a copy of the slides, we should be able to see that soon. So jumping in, sorry, that's a little bit why I'm a bit frazzled here. It's a little different than usual. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. Welcome to today's webinar. I love the BrightTalk platform as a great way to engage, but I think it's important that you know a little bit about me and who I am and that sort of thing. I actually started my career in family business, and the reason I always say that my career is all about making lemonade out of lemons is because I thought I had everything all figured out, and I was going to be in my family business for a long time. Unfortunately, that business was commercial photography, and I think we all know what's happened to the world of photography. So I actually then left my family business and started my own HR consulting company, HR Partners. And my mission was to work with very small organizations that didn't have their own HR people and help provide HR support to them. I started that in 1998, and it ended up growing to be 6 employees working from the basement of my home. And eventually we came to be about $1 million in sales. And along came Arthur J. Gallagher. Some of you on the call may be familiar with Gallagher Benefit Services, Gallagher Bassett, Arthur J. Gallagher. In general, they actually bought my consulting company back in 2007. And I stayed on for another 7 years to run their small business consulting practice until I left in 2013 to start HR Topics. And HR Topics brought me full circle back to the entrepreneurial world that I really love, doing speaking and conferences, all sorts of internal corporate training, that sort of thing. And I love it. Just so you know, I also do have a master's degree in human resources, and I'm certified as both an SPHR and a SHRM SCP. For anyone on the call that is also certified, at the end of the webinar, I will be giving you the certification credits for both HRCI and SHRM. This program is certified as, you can get recertification credit for it. So let's talk a minute about what the next hour is going to be like. My style is fairly high level, and I tend to give you a lot of content and would be happy to give you more details if you want. I do want you to participate, and the way you can participate on this webinar is by participating in the polls that we have and asking questions. I will be answering the questions at the end. It's kind of difficult for me to do both in the middle, but I will get to the questions and we can have as much interaction as you like. It looks like the new attachment, no, bummer, it's not there yet. Okay, and then finally, I want to make sure that you take action following this webinar. So let's talk about performance management in general. Why do we even have performance management programs? And I believe the key point is that we understand the strategic goals and make sure that those are aligned with the organization. In the next 45 minutes or so, we're not going to get a ton into how to actually put together a performance management program. That's another topic that I have and one that I often do internally in corporations because it is so specific to the way you and your company work. But we're going to talk about the whole process and how you can bring these things into your organization and possibly design your own programs as you go. I like to talk to people about the whole idea of appraisals. And the idea of a performance appraisal is really that we are doing something very full cycle, that we're not just doing a review of, yes, you came in on time, no, you didn't come in on time, yes, you figure out our ethics. When we talk about an appraisal, I really encourage people to think about how we are appraising the full scope of work and how that impacts the organization going forward. Why does performance management even matter? And it matters, first of all, to get everybody on the same page. We all know this one goofball employee that we may have that wants to do things on their own, and that isn't going to be particularly productive. There's also a very critical compliance issue that goes along with performance management. Anytime we have any kind of litigation in our organizations, the first thing an attorney or a judge is going to ask you for is written documentation of an employee situation. Performance management really does go a long way to engaging employees. We're all talking these days about employee engagement, and we use performance management as a way to help employees know where they are today and how to plan for a future in our organization. When I look with companies at exit surveys or even stay interviews, which are the most popular, the reason employees leave organizations is because they don't think that there's a future for them. And performance management is a time that you can really sit down and have these conversations with your employees. They really do want to know how they're doing and if what they're doing fits into your organizational goals. Which is why when we talk about performance management, we like you to think about making sure that your managers know the strategic plan. And as you are helping managers write performance review documents, you are looking at how the employees of today can meet the needs and goals that your strategic plan has laid out for the future. You need people to both be aware and aligned with the strategic plan of your organization. I'd like to just stop 1 second. I see we have a lot of new people. I just want to remind people the slides do not appear to be in the attachments yet. Bright Talk is working on that, and I'm hoping they will get loaded during the program. Otherwise, I will certainly send everybody a copy of these slides when we are finished. There seems to be some system issue that they're working on as we do the webinar. So back to the content. Performance management is critical that when you look at how employees are doing in your organization, you're doing it through a lens of what the organization needs going forward. It really doesn't matter if you have the best employee in the world doing work from 3 years ago, and they're doing it terrifically, but maybe you really don't need it anymore. And you want them focused on the work for the future. So really make sure that everyone in your organization is aware of where you're going and they're focusing the performance management conversations on where you want to be. The idea of aligning the performance review with your strategic plan is all about adding value through systemic alignment. You want your managers thinking about the things in the plan that are behind the long-term strategy. You want employees thinking today about where you want them to be in 18 months. Because through a good performance conversation, you may be able to start some of the training initiatives today so that your employees are prepared for the positions you have in the future, and you don't have to go recruit externally. You want to make sure that you are thinking about, when I say consider items left out of the plan, those are going to be the items that you may want to talk to your CEO or leadership team about. What might have been important to them when they were having their strategic planning conversation, but didn't really rise to an issue that needed to be included in the long-term plan? You want to make sure that those things might be the kinds of issues that you can have employees addressing today. And finally, make sure that your performance management program, I went ahead too fast, provides a timeline for how this is all going to be accomplished. So let's talk for a minute about the goal setting when we talk about performance management. We want to make sure that the goals we are coming up with really do reflect what is considered success in the organization, and that we're looking at the acceptable ROI, that's return on investment for people who may not be aware, that your organization embraces. Because if we want to go out and do something, but we're not going to get the kind of return we want, then it's not something we want our employees focused on. And also, you want to make sure that your managers are honestly working with employees on what matters for the future. You don't want to be dealing with things that just because the employee wants it, but it doesn't work for us. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, we had a top performer at a manufacturing company I was working with in customer service. She was absolutely fabulous. And she came in, we had a training initiative where we said we would pay for training for people, and she decided she wanted to go to nursing school. And she was very upset when we said that that wasn't something we were willing to pay for. It was really sort of funny, I thought, to be honest, that she thought we would. But her nursing school was going to take 2.5 years. So at that point, we were able to have a really open and honest conversation with her about what she might be able to do for the next 2.5 years. We did give her training opportunities internally in terms of management, because we really wanted to make sure that we were capturing the knowledge, and we wanted to make sure that she remained engaged and did a great job for our team. But obviously, we were not going to help her with her nursing school. So when you're doing goal setting, you really want that honest reflection and make sure that what's important to you is also important to the employee. So here's our first poll. I would ask you all to just let me know on the call how many employees are in your organization. And let me shoot the poll out to you and allow you to start voting. Are you under 20 employees, 21 to 49, 50 to 199, 200 to 499, or over 500? You should be able to see the poll. And this helps me to understand who we have on the call. There we go. We've got some votes coming in. So if you all would vote, it is, as I said, really helpful as I begin to craft some of the thoughts and comments for the next half an hour or 40 minutes that we have together. So we've got about 10 more seconds. I'm going to leave it open so we don't spend too much time here. But good. Okay, here come all the numbers. Excellent. I'm going to give you guys a few more seconds. About, oh boy, more than half our group is 60 or more employees. So 60% have over 500 employees. So a lot of people are from very large organizations. And it'll be interesting to see how some of you are looking to incorporate this information. But we do have about 30% of the group has under 200 employees. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the voting right now and ask you to just think about, for those of you in the very large organizations, I'm hoping that the comments that we have will help you really understand why some of this is being done today in the market and some of the changes you may be seeing coming down from larger corporate offices. For those of you in the smaller organizations, you'll find this to be a lot of content in terms of how you might want to make changes or set up your current processes and procedures. So as we talk about the importance of compliance in the performance review program, I want you to understand a couple of these reasons why compliance is so important. The performance review does create for us what we call a defensible position, which means that if you write them up well and you have good, honest, objective documentation, it will be used to defend your position in many, many organizations. You want the performance review to show that you are treating all employees equally, and there is an impact on how they treat others. The performance review should be able to show you the connection with customers, and really is something that we use often when there are workers' comp injuries. So as I talk about the compliance reasons for performance management, understand that there are a lot of reasons we use these documents. Now, any good performance review program should involve job descriptions. And hopefully everybody on the call has job descriptions in their organizations that they can point to. The reason we like to talk about the job description when we talk about performance management is this really should refer to the competencies, the physical requirements, all those pieces that we want to sit down and talk about once a year with our employees. We want to make sure that the job description today accurately reflects what we're doing on the actual job. So for those of you who may not have job descriptions written, you want to get those written. And for those of you who do, I suggest that the performance review is a great time of year to sit down with your employees and make sure that those reviews are in fact up to date. But one of the things we want to make sure we're talking about in our performance review process is really what our workers look like today. And we have a new group of what we call competencies that are important to our organization. The question that I challenge you to think about is that if you agree in your organization that these are the important things I went one too far. These are the important things we want to be thinking about, then I challenge you to look at your performance review document and see if these are the things you are rating employees on. Or are you still in a place today where you are rating your employees on attendance, on quality, on amount of work they get done, on, some of these, I just did it again. Sorry, group. I'm going to just skip that. Are you really rating your employees on the new values that we care about in work? And the reason that is so important is because if you are still rating people on things like attendance, let's just take that as a specific example. The attendance issue should be dealt with long before the performance review conversation ever happens. You should be interacting with those employees on a day-to-day basis when they are having those issues. So by the time you get to the performance review meeting, you need to be talking about the things that you care about that are going to drive your organization forward. So now let's look, now it's going to go through all these again. Let's look quickly at the next slide, which is all about what performance review should not be. Now, when I come into organizations and do performance review training, and I do it with both employees and managers, I think it is critical that each of you think about the importance of training your employees to come to the performance review meeting ready to have a productive, open, and honest conversation. So for those of you who may do that kind of training internally, this is a clip from the TV show Scrubs about performance reviews. And I don't show it during the webinar. I do it during my live presentations because it's too hard with the technology. But you have this link here, or you can just go to YouTube and put in Scrubs performance review, and it will come right up. This will be on the slides I send you, so you will also be able to click to it from there. But do know that this is a great example of what a performance review is not. And I love to bring social media and pop culture into the trainings. I think that it really can be productive. So let's talk for a minute about what the performance review program should be. It should be a resource for your employees where they are able to get an honest evaluation and participate in a conversation. Now that means that they also need to be open to feedback and understand that your goal is going to be to align their performance with the organizational needs. We want to use this as a time to explore the kind of training they feel that they're going to need. From the manager's perspective, we want the performance review to be reflective of the entire body of work of the employee, and for the manager to equally be prepared for an open two-way dialogue. We want the manager to learn how to give constructive feedback and not just tell the employee everything that they're doing wrong, and be available to opportunities that the employee may want to explore. Finally, it's critical that your manager understands what is the budget for employee development. Before your managers go off and promise someone an MBA program, you want to make sure that they understand the budget that is available to them to do these sorts of things. A manager should be giving ongoing feedback. The feedback should be immediate. And when there's an issue, don't wait for the performance review program. We want to make sure that your managers understand that positive feedback should be given very publicly. We want to use that as a way to show others the kind of behavior that we think is terrific. But we want to make sure that they're also giving constructive feedback in private. So they're pulling someone into their office and they're not embarrassing them publicly. You should have your own internal conversation about what to document and what not to document. You don't have to write everything down, but things should be documented when they're an important either breach of company policy or something that you really want to make sure to remember to reward employees for at the same time. Managers and employees both should understand the goals of the performance review process. Every organization has different goals for doing this. Sometimes it's salary. Sometimes it's about setting the performance goals. Sometimes it's about feedback. We've talked a lot about compliance. And sometimes it's just a great way to ensure that managers are spending a little bit of one-on-one time with those employees. I would suggest to you that your performance review process really should be about all of the above. And it should be a never-ending cycle where you're planning for these conversations, you've got ongoing assessment happening all the time, and that you are constantly reviewing what the employees are doing and how to make that happen better. How many of you think this accurately reflects your performance management programs? And obviously I can't get your feedback, but we want to make sure this is not what you are doing on a regular basis. We want managers looking at the full body of work from their employees. And one suggestion I have that I think can be particularly effective is for managers to have a file at their desk, just a good old-fashioned file folder, where throughout the year they are writing down both positive and negative things that an employee does, so that at the end of the year or whenever your performance reviews are going to occur, they simply pull that out of their file, open it up, and they've got all sorts of great examples to use on the actual performance review document. So let's really think about what a system that works looks like. The first is to use job descriptions as a starting point. Now that doesn't mean, I do not believe that you should take your job description and start rating your employees based on every single item on that job description. But I do believe that it is a time, as I talked about earlier, for your managers to grab the job description, make sure it still accurately reflects the job, and then rate the employees conceptually on what they've been asked to do. You want to make sure that that continues to align with the strategic goals of the organization. What was the job description 3 years ago may not be the job description that aligns with what we need for the going forward. We should be using this system to set goals for the new year and to provide a place for employees to give you feedback just like you're giving them. Consider a separate form for your employees. And this is something that I'm really passionate about. I believe that employees should have the same opportunity to rate themselves as the manager. And I believe employees should be asked to use a different form than the manager. And the reason that I suggest that is because I don't want the conversation when it occurs to degrade into a discussion about you gave me a 2 and I gave myself a 3. Don't you think I deserve a 3? I think the idea is about having the employee reflect on the areas in which they're going to be evaluated before the conversation occurs. And let me give you an example about where this has been so helpful to me throughout my career. When I did performance reviews, I had a team of 7 people. When I did performance reviews, it was virtually impossible for me as a manager to remember every success my employees had throughout the year. So by the employees filling this out, I had them remind me of what they did this year that was especially meaningful. And I would often look at their review while I was writing my own and say to myself, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. So you want I didn't realize you want employees to give you those ideas so that you can include them on the performance review document without your having to actually remember everything. I guess I could have gone forward there. So when we talk about performance management, I want to understand what people on the call are doing today. So let me click through the slide, but I'm going to open up another poll, and I would love you on the call to tell us what you are doing today. How often do you do performance reviews? Annually on the employee's anniversary? Do you do them annually and your entire company does them at the same time during the year? Do you do them semi-annually? And some of you these days might actually do them quarterly. Why don't we lump semi-annually and quarterly together? Do you have documented regular feedback sessions but on no particular schedule? Or do you just encourage managers to do reviews and hope it all works out? There's really no right or wrong answer to when people do performance reviews, but I do think it's interesting. Obviously, the only wrong answer here, and it's not wrong because I see more and more organizations with it, but is the idea of encouraging managers to review and hope. Because let me assure you that if that is your philosophy, it's not going to happen. You're going to be hoping for a long, long time. And know that if that is what you're doing, feel free to answer that way because I cannot see who answers what. It looks like so far the vast majority of our people do it annually, once a year, all at the same time. I'm actually sort of surprised that we have nobody on the call who does it annually on the anniversary of an employee. I typically see that about 50-50, but more and more people have moved to the once a year and the semi-annually. So we have 7%. Let me stop the vote. Whoops, we got a couple more votes coming in. Let me just let them do that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the voting. So we've got 73% do annually, once a year at the same time of year. So that's really interesting that is still what most people do, although we're hearing a lot about in the news about these people that are dropping the performance reviews. I don't see that to be very accurate in reality. So when you're creating your system, make sure that you've got a program that is aligned with the goals of an organization and that you are in fact setting out a training budget that will meet the resources that you need. I talked a little bit earlier, but I want to re-highlight the idea of setting a timeline for this that makes sense. I often talk to organizations about, I believe the best time to do a performance review is 8 to 10 weeks prior to your fiscal year beginning. And the reason I say that is because so many people still combine the performance review discussion with salary discussions. And if you're going to do that, wouldn't it be great to know before your fiscal year begins what is your salary budget for the next year? So that is my preferred timeline in organizations. But you also want to be sensitive to when your organization is busiest. So let me give you an example of a client of mine where I came in and helped them revamp their performance review process and did some internal training on it. We realized the start of their fiscal year was July 1st. They're a nonprofit and they're an association, and their major event is in May every year. It might have been June, May or June. So if we thought 6 to 8 weeks before the beginning of their fiscal year, that is their absolute busiest time when they are all preparing for this meeting. So we took that into account, and we bumped the performance review process all the way back to the beginning of the end of February. So we made the timeline February through March for the entire process, so that when they started ramping up for their annual meeting in April, this was already behind them. So make sure when you think about your timeline, you're thinking about the full scope of the organization and how this fits into things. Now, this is another thing that I will provide to you following the webinar, because it doesn't look like our attachments are getting added there. So I will email this to you this afternoon or tomorrow. But what this is to encourage you and your management team to think about training and development outside the scope of just sending people off to classes. There are all sorts of different ways we can engage our employees and give them really meaningful life experiences. I believe, and it's supported by adult learning theory, that employees learn to do new things the best by giving it a try. And they learn what doesn't work by giving it a try. And so all of these things, if you look at this chart, show all sorts of different ways we can get our employees involved without actually paying for a program. And for some of you may have very limited budgets, and you think that getting your employees the training they need is completely impossible. Well, look at this chart. I would say probably 80% of these things require no or a minimal fee. So use this with your management team to get them out of the box of just saying, my employee needs to learn X, so I'm going to send them to this $500 course. There may be a way today that people can do this themselves. It is critical when we talk about performance management working that we focus on training our team to do this right. Too often we simply say, okay, here's the performance review form, go fill it out and make sure that you have the conversation with your employees and give it back to us. We want to make sure we train our managers to do this properly and our employees to receive the information. One of the things that I really believe in that some managers disagree with is giving the employee their review the morning of the meeting. There is nothing worse than asking an employee to come into their manager's office to discuss performance and then have no idea what's coming at them. Rather, you want to, I believe, if you give them the document that morning, they have time to read it over, and you simply start the meeting by saying, is there anything in there that surprised you? You don't have to read the employee the review word by word. I am assuming most of us work with employees that know how to read. The reason I suggest you give it to them that morning is because you are not interested in feedback from their mother, feedback from their spouse. You don't want to give them enough time to have all sorts of people weigh in on the conversation. Rather, you want to just provide it to them so that they are prepared for the conversation. You want to then focus the conversation on high-level accomplishments and opportunities for improvement. And make sure that you and your managers are prepared to describe actual situations or describe in detail what behavior you expect to see that you may not be seeing today. Those are all the pieces, and make sure that your managers understand that employees should be allowed to participate. Sometimes managers get very nervous themselves and they're doing so much talking that we're not getting the employee enough time to do what they need to be doing. Most of all, everybody just needs to relax. One of the things when I train employees, I remind them is that while there's going to be some constructive feedback during the performance review process, if you were really in trouble of losing your job, you would know about it before you ever got to that meeting. So show up, relax, and just be comfortable. And if you're in an organization where that is not true, then you need to really think about the ongoing communication you're having with your employees. So as we look at a full performance management program, we have to know that it will include a detailed understanding of the position. That's really going to be your job description. And that as we look at how we can engage our employees, we have to understand that each one of them has their own motivation, and that a carrot that we might use for one employee may not work for another. I had a situation years ago where we had a sales contest, where we gave out, we thought it was terrific, for highest sales in a 3-month period. We were giving a night at the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago and a gift certificate to a very expensive dinner out, where that salesperson could take anyone important to them and go downtown. And we thought it was terrific. Wouldn't everybody love this? Well, the guy who won, his name was Mickey, the next Monday morning, he won on a Friday afternoon. We gave him his certificate. He was excited. We were excited. He came in Monday morning and gave it back to me. And I said, "What's this?" And he said, "My wife said she won't go and leave our daughter, and it's ridiculous to waste it. So why don't you just give it to somebody else who wants it?" And it's a lesson that has stuck with me for probably 25 years of my HR career, that we cannot just assume that what motivates one employee is going to work for another. Now, the truth is, this guy did win the contest, and he was motivated simply by the idea of being the best salesperson we had. So he didn't even need an award. And we see that more and more these days, that employees just do really want to be the best. Again, that you are aligned with your goals of your organization, that your performance management program does include feedback and documentation, and that you are really giving that to employees. And then we look at total compensation programs. I actually did a Bright Talk webinar on creating total compensation statements. And if any of you want to see that, you absolutely can go over and have a look. But the idea that we're looking at total compensation, not just dollars and cents. And so it's important that you have these conversations during performance management of what your employees would like to see from you. They may prefer a day off with pay. They may prefer a 4-day work week. Any of these things could be important. And then finally, I encourage you to use your performance review program as a time to really identify top talent. And in my book, Taking a Seat at the Table, I talk about the difference between top talent and top performers. And it's an important distinction that we don't have time to get into today, but you want to make sure that you are rewarding the top talent for the future, even though you also need to be taking care of those top performers. And then I love to remind people that it is appropriate to separate employees when the time is right. Not everybody is going to be a long-term keeper for your organization. And there is a certain amount of what we would call good turnover. So make sure that you honor that and help your managers make that decision and go through that process when the time is right for you. So that is the extent of my prepared remarks on performance management. I will be taking questions from the audience now for as long as we have. I see that we have a few questions out here. Oh, and it looks like by now people are having some of the presentation, the audio things, I can't really control. That's typically your system, and by now you probably can't hear me anyway. But I do want to give you the numbers for both HRCI and SHRM for those people that have watched the entire program. The HRCI number is 264624. Let me repeat that. For HRCI, it's 264624. And for SHRM, it's 17-WELRO. So SHRM is 17-WELRO. And HRCI is 264624. Unfortunately, it looks like Bright Talk never did get the slides up, so I will send those out to everybody this afternoon. It might be tomorrow morning, but you'll get them today or tomorrow. I will send them out to everybody who logged in and watched. And I thank you for your attendance and hope to connect with all of you soon. Thanks a bunch. Bye-bye.